So this is the first kiln that I built. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it looks like a barbecue. It is barbecue, but I lined the interior with some bricks, a bit more of just like a sort of fire pit. And essentially this same thing could be accomplished by just literally building a fire pit in your yard. I thought that this would be a little bit more efficient. I didn't want to use up too much fuel or have to have a fire going for too long. The other advantage of this is the airflow. So as you start to fire, if you're firing with combustible fuel, you need a combination of air and fuel, and that combination is going to help you get your temperature. So for this one, there's holes in the bottom so that the air is flowing up through the fire, up through the fuel, and increasing that temperature just the same way that it normally works when you're barbecuing. So that's one of the main reasons why I use this. And here's the result. So my second kiln is a bit more sophisticated, you can see. This is much more based on like a wood-fired kiln and sort of the kilns that I think most people are used to. One of the main developments in firing historically is not fuel source, it's not air source, but it's actually the insulation. Like once you figured out how to make refractory materials that could withstand higher temperatures, you could go to higher temperatures with your kiln. And while I don't think that these bricks are necessarily made for building a kiln, I could tell by their light color that they were pretty close to fire brick, at least the best that I could find at Urban Ore. If these bricks had been sort of the more traditional, red brick that you think of when you think of, New England architecture, those would definitely melt. Iron is flux, and it would cause the bricks to melt pretty thoroughly. But because these seem to have a lower iron content and probably a higher alumina and silica content, I knew that they could withstand a hotter temperature. Now, I've got a chamber here, which is also the chimney. Basically, the way that I fire this, I moved some bricks around, so you can't fully see it, but I'll show you a video of it firing. I basically just used bricks as the damper and the air control, and then all of the fire, all the fuel went in right here. You can see I've got quite a bit left over in there, some getting ready for the next firing, which I'm actually not going to do in this kiln. But I just basically shoved in small pieces of wood, nothing big. Actually, the smaller the wood, the better release of the BTUs you get. BTUs is basically the energy that's stored in the wood that's released by burning, and then that's actually what transfers the energy and the glow to the pot inside the chamber. So this is a natural draft kiln where there's more places for the air to go out than to come back out this way, even though there was quite a bit of shooting back out. And I'll show you the trick that I did to get this up to temperature was to not just burn the wood in here and rely on the subtle draft, but I actually blew my shop vac in here and just really increased the temperature dramatically. So here's the pot, actually. And you can see, again, just like my first attempt, it's very uneven. This is the front, this is the side that was facing the fire, and this is the side that was facing the back of the kiln. So on the front here, I've got a lot of wood ash blown on to the pot. Some of it is beginning to melt. On the back here, much lighter color, very uneven. You can see that this is actually really light. This is maybe just above bisque temperature through this strip right here, whereas this is probably closer to like cone 1 maybe. And somewhere around here it sort of transitions into what I'm going to call it around cone 8 or cone 9. It's hard to say. Again, I've not been using pyrometric cones, not been using a pyrometer. I've just been going based on what I see in the kiln. It got a lot of cracking and warping because I went up so fast. But you know, as you can see, I'm not trying to do anything prim and pristine here. I'm just actually working on you know, using what the kiln's capable of and working with this black mountain, which I think lends itself to this kind of thing. And I know this clay pretty well, so you know, this is what it looks like when it's hotter. This is what it looks like when it's closer to like cone 6, and this is what it looks like. It's a little bit hotter than bisque. It's maybe cone 1. Yeah, but you know, all in all, I got this thing pretty hot, and just with using hard brick that I found at Urban Ore. I think all in all, this is a $20 kiln. So that's where I'm at now. It's you know, been nice to have this as an option and to play around with. And I was about to rebuild my little kiln here and sort of try some different things out to see if I can make it more efficient. And then Adam Shiverdecker got me a backyard kiln stimulus package, which is all this soft brick. And there's a lot of hard brick here, which I can also use, kiln shelves, which I can use, but this stuff is really what's going to make the difference. This is much lighter. There's a lot more space in this brick, so it's going to retain the heat a lot easier. The hard brick, it has to absorb the heat a bit, and it can kind of like leak the temperature, but this stuff will insulate this kiln pretty good. So I should be able to get it probably hotter and hopefully with less fuel, because I'm sort of running out of fuel. So this is what I've been using in the wood kiln. It's inserts from wine boxes that I got from Craigslist for free several weeks ago. It went through a handful of boxes of these, but this wood is really dry, but I'm kind of running out of it. So this firing is going to be a little bit different. I've got some of that I've got to process, some bigger pieces that I'm going to cut down into small chunks. I've got some pallet wood that I've broken up here, and I've got some more pallets that I'm going to break up. And my goal for this is to get small pieces of wood. I don't want to be shoving big chunks of wood in there for 2 reasons. One, I don't want the firebox to be very big. I want the wood to go in, burn, release the ash into the chamber, and get the temperature up as much as I can without, you know, too much air or too much fuel. That's not always the goal on a wood kiln. Like on a wood kiln, a lot of times you fire slowly over days, but you know, our goals are a little different. That goal is to build up ash, which definitely gets you that nice, you know, wood-fired thing that everyone likes. But my goal with this is to work with very little fuel and try to get it up to temperature and see what it's capable of. So I've got to process all this stuff down into small pieces. Those small pieces burn a lot faster, so I can go a lot farther, and it can get me a lot hotter with less fuel. Now after this kiln build, I might actually convert one into a gas kiln and see if I can fire it using a propane tank, which will be a lot cleaner for, you know, my neighbors, and you know, I can go out and buy a propane tank. It's hard to buy this type of firewood. Most of the firewood that you get is going to be big chunks, big logs that you have to chop up. But really what works best is anything that's been kiln dried, which this is even bigger than I want. I'm gonna be cutting all this stuff down and processing it. But yeah, that's the fuel I'm using. Okay, so I've disassembled my first kiln, and now I'm starting to reassemble the kiln using some of this new stuff that I got and trying to rethink a couple different things. I was sort of hitting the pot. I was sitting directly on the floor. I was sort of hitting it with the sticks when I was putting the fuel in. I'm going to try to avoid that. I'm going to try to make it so I can fire with minimal fuel, and I want to increase the airflow, and I want to increase insulation and try to get a more even firing on the pot. Now, I just want to remind everyone, I only kind of know what I'm doing. So this is just going to be an experiment based on what I know, and then I'm going to just build on that information, you know, as I get it back. Okay, so I know it looks a little crazy, but here basically is the main chamber. You can see the most important part are these soft bricks lining that chamber, and the chamber itself being like fairly small. Essentially, this pot is just kind of sitting in the chimney. I'm gonna tighten it up and change the pattern a little bit, but the way that I'm using the hard bricks on the outside is really just for support and structure. It will add some more insulation, but there's a lot of holes where the air can get out, and you know, I can come in and I might actually do this and just kind of shove some clay in some of those gaps, but for the most part I'm not going to worry too much about it, because this kiln is already going to be, you know, 10 times more efficient than my last one. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so here is the finished product, or at least that's what I'm going to go with. So here's the top. You can see I swirled the bricks a little bit. I changed the angle just to sort of kind of encourage some kind of airflow as it comes up around the top of the pot. You can kind of see the pot down in there. There it is. I used hard brick up on top because this is going to be my damper, and I didn't want to slide on the soft brick and damage it. So I've got this hard brick up top. It looks a little weird, but I'm leaving the bricks whole so that I don't have to break them, and can reuse it on my next attempt. And I think this is basically it. I'm not going to need. There's gonna be times when I'm not going to need much airflow out of the top. It'll come out anyway, but I want to, you know, trap some of that gas, some of that smoke and ash, and some of the heat in there as well. Especially when I start to use the forced air, it's gonna create quite a bit of force into this chamber. I might add a few more bricks to this just because I've got some left over. I might just put it around, sort of, you know, here and there wherever I see gaps, and then I probably do need to shove some clay into some of the bigger gaps, but for the most part, this is what I'm going to go with.